Welcome, everyone, to Phillies Extra, the baseball show from the Philadelphia Inquirer. I'm your host, Scott Lauber, down here in Clearwater, Florida, and I couldn't be happier to be joined this week by Phillies shortstop prospect Aidan Miller. You know, we aim to make this show as evergreen as possible because we know that people listen not only when it drops on Fridays, but also throughout the weekend and into the following week. But I wanted to have Aidan on right now because as we tape this, he's about to play in the annual minor league showcase game that MLB has very cleverly marketed as Spring Breakout. Now, this event started last year, and it's one of the really cooler days on the spring training calendar because every organization puts together a team of its best players from all across the minor leagues, every level, for an exhibition game against another organization's best. I got to cover the inaugural Spring Breakout last year when the Phillies played the Tigers over in Lakeland, and I was struck by how much the players really got into it. In the first inning of that game, Justin Crawford got on base, he stole second, and he scored on Aiden Miller's single through the left side. And Miller told me later that when he got back to the dugout, he got a big smile and a high five from Crawford, the touted center field prospect, who said, "I can get used to this." So could the Phillies, of course, because they would love it if it was foreshadowing what's to come in a few years at Citizens Bank Park. Miller grew up about a half hour from right where I sit in Clearwater, and he had a lot of friends and family at that game last year. I was talking to him the other day. With Griffin Burkholder, who's an outfield prospect for the Phillies, who was drafted last year. He'll be playing in this game this year, and he said his family's coming from Virginia. So it's kind of a big deal for some of these prospects to get a day in the spotlight during spring training. But there's so much more that I want to talk about with Miller. He was invited to Major League Spring Training for the first time this year and was the youngest player in camp. He won't be 21 until June. So we'll talk about that experience a little bit. We'll also discuss whether he sees himself staying at shortstop or moving on to another position and what he thinks he still needs to do to prove that he's ready for the big leagues as he returns to Double-A to open this season. So if you stick with us after the interview, I'll touch on a few other topics that are on my mind with the Phillies now in the stretch run, I guess you could say, of spring training. Opening day on March 27th is coming up quickly. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Aidan Miller. Aidan Miller, welcome to Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
So the other day, when the Major League team was off, I came down to the complex while you were taking batting practice and fielding grounders, and I realized I haven't had a chance to speak with you since the Phillies sent you over to the minor league side. So I need to start by doing something that, I'm sure your friends and your family have been doing ever since spring training started, and that's, ask you for some highlights from the 2 weeks or so that you spent in the clubhouse with Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber and the rest of those guys. So What stuck out to you? What do you tell your friends and family when they ask what that experience was all about?
Man, everything. Just getting to be a part of that clubhouse, be a part of that locker room, and meet so many cool people. I think that was the biggest highlight. Just getting my feet wet over there and really getting that full, big league experience and just trying to soak it all up. So there were so many cool moments. I would say even from the start, we were doing physicals on day one, and I'm sitting in my locker just kind of trying to feel out the vibe of the room. And Harper walks in. He walks right over to my locker and introduces himself to me. And that was probably one of the cooler moments of the whole experience. And, that just means a lot. The leader in that clubhouse coming up to a new guy who he's probably, never heard of me. And he probably noticed I was new and introduced himself to me. So that meant a lot. And really just how welcoming and open that clubhouse was. You can really get a sense on, why they're so good. It's just they all get along so well, and it's really fun to be a part of.
I bet Bryce knows more about you than you think. It's funny because the year of the COVID draft, 2020, when baseball was shut down, Mick Abel got drafted in the first round, and Bryce made a point of asking, at that time, Matt Klentak was the GM. He wanted to see if he could get phone numbers for the kids that they drafted because he wanted to call them. And Mick was saying, he was at a party with his friends and family after the draft, and he gets a FaceTime from Bryce Harper, and he's like, "Who's pranking me?" And Bryce actually called him up. So he's plugged in. I guarantee he knows a lot about you. And So like, was there one, I know on the first day you said you were a little starstruck, right? By some of the names that were in that room. Was there like one question you wanted to ask Bryce or maybe Trey, being that he's also a shortstop? Was there one thing you wanted to ask those guys and make a point of sort of checking off your list and making sure that you got done?
I wouldn't say it was so much asking them questions. I think it was just about watching them. Watching how they go about their days, their routines, and really every little thing they do to get them ready for games. Especially from Trey, being a shortstop as well, just kind of watching and seeing how he preps every morning, and how he gets his body right after games and after long days. And I think I learned the most from just observing and watching. And I didn't really want to bug too many guys, when they're doing their thing. And I just observed a lot, and I think I took a lot of things that I watched from those guys and what they do throughout the day, back to the minor league side.
I watched you take live batting practice one day against Jesus Luzardo. I think you faced Christopher Sanchez too. What's that like for a young hitter? Because I'm guessing that it's not every day in the minor leagues that you're seeing, a changeup like Sanchez's or a guy who's got Luzardo's stuff, so you're up there and you're in the box against them. And what's that part of the experience like? And what do you take away from that?
Man, it's cool. It's not every day you get to face those guys in live BP. And the thing about the Phillies pitching staff is that they're so good that, every guy they have is a stud. So, but I think it makes you better as well. You're going up against the best of the best, and you have to bring it what you got. And, I think ultimately that makes you better as well. And, facing Sanchez that one day, seeing like a real big league changeup for the first time, it was pretty nasty. I went back to K Long after. I'm like, man, that thing's nasty. He's like, yep, that's why it's the best in baseball. So, Luzardo too. I mean, his fastball has a lot of carry, a lot of ride. So just seeing different pitchers and what they had, different arsenals, it was really cool to, face that and get to experience it.
Okay, two-part question. So you spent some time on the half field with Bobby Dickerson, which a lot of guys say is a unique experience if you've never done it before. He breaks out the catcher's masks and wants people to see the ball behind their face and stuff like that. What did you learn going through what I call Camp Dickerson for the first time?
Oh, that was awesome. Bobby's the man, and you can just tell he really cares about what he does, and he really cares for the players. And I think when you really connect with the coach is when you can really feel that they care for you. And I felt that right away with Bobby. He was giving me every little bit and pieces he had to help me and improve my game. And it was really fun getting to work with him because you hear about him all the time. You hear he's the best infield coach in the big leagues, and so many great stories about the guys he's worked with, the things he's done for so many great players. And I was glad to be a part of it and try to soak up as much as I can. But yeah, when you brought out the catcher's mask and we were hitting tennis balls off our face, it was pretty funny. But everything has a purpose behind it, so it's really cool.
Um, just for people who've never seen it before. So yeah, that's exactly what happens, right? He hits tennis balls at you, and if I'm not mistaken, because I've asked guys about it, right? The whole point is he wants you to see the ball in the glove, right? Like, or get a better look at it. I mean, what does that do for you as an infielder? What does that drill do, and how does it help you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it helps you stay low and it helps keep your eyes engaged. So, the lower you are in the infield, I think the more control you have of hops, and it's easier to read, if there's a bad hop and such. So, you throw on the catcher's mask. I know me and Otto did it one day, and he just kind of flips balls and you have to hit it off your face. So, it's just really about getting your eyes behind the baseball, and it really translates when you go back to doing regular ground balls.
And the second part, I think the plan is to keep you at shortstop for now. That's what Dave Dombrowski said on day one of camp. And I did see you taking some grounders at third base the other day. Have they expressed to you that they want you to sort of stay at shortstop when you start the season at Reading and move forward? And, is that sort of the plan that they've presented to you?
Yeah, from what I hear, I'm a shortstop right now, and that can change. There's so many things that go into it, but as of right now, I'm a shortstop. And the other day, I was taking ground balls at third base, so I'm playing half the game at third in the breakout game. So I was just kind of getting comfortable over there and getting my feet wet again over there. So I played a little bit of third base in high school, so it's pretty familiar with me over there. So yeah, it was more about just getting more reps and getting my eyes adjusted to back to being a third base, a little longer of a throw. So yeah.
Larry Boa did tell me like he was impressed with your range and your arm and, just your overall athleticism there at short. And he's got a few gold gloves, on his mantle. So coming from him, that's a pretty nice endorsement. What was it like for you to, whether it's Boa, I don't know if you were in camp the other day when Jimmy Rollins was around, but Jimmy's been in camp and you've got Trey. There's some pretty good shortstops to kind of pick their brains here in this camp.
Yeah, there's so many. That's why it's just so fun to be a part of it. Working with Larry and, for him to say those things about me, it means a lot, because he's played and he understands, what it takes to be in the big leagues and how, you stick there too. So, I think a lot of the knack on me is that I'm a bigger bodied shortstop. So a lot of people don't think I have the range or the athleticism to stick over there. But I really think everybody who's watched me play over there has really truly believed that I can stick there and play shortstop. So, coming from Larry, that's really all I need to hear right there.
You're probably playing in a different organization right now if you didn't break the hamate bone in your hand before your senior season. And if you stay healthy that year, you probably get drafted before the Phillies pick in that first round a couple of years ago. And there's a similar story in Phillies history that's pretty famous. Cole Hamels broke his arm in high school, and there were some teams that were sort of scared off by that injury. And he kind of fell into the Phillies' lap at 17th overall in 2002. Does it motivate you to show that, hey, 26 teams passed on me, but I'm not the 27th best player in that draft class?
No, for sure. Yeah, there were so many things that went into that draft. It was a little bit of a stressful time for me and the family. So, ultimately just not getting a chance to play my senior year of high school. A lot of scouts got worried about that. And, it was only a hamate bone. So I'm still, I don't know why they were so worried about it. But, getting a chance to still, fall into the Phillies' lap, it was a blessing in disguise. So I kind of noticed after the draft, teams who are picking in the later round of the first round are usually the better teams and the better organizations. So that's kind of the way I looked at it. Like I'm falling into, I'm going later in the draft, falling down the boards a little bit, but I'm ultimately going to a better team. When you go high in the draft, top 10, top 5 picks, or you go into a team that didn't have a very good year the year before that. So, there's different ways you can look at it, and that's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
So Dave Dombrowski was asked about you specifically on the first day of camp. And I know you said you heard his answer or were made aware of it, but he said, he might come quickly. And I'll tell you, Dave has a track record of pushing prospects fast. Like I covered the Red Sox back when he was running their baseball ops. And in 2016, he called up Andrew Benintendi right from AA. And the year after that, Rafael Devers played like a handful of games in AAA and he was in the big leagues. So I would imagine it must fire you up, right, to hear Dombrowski say something like that. Like he could, he's in AA now and he could be here really quickly.
Yeah, that was pretty cool seeing that. Ultimately, he's the guy who makes the decision if I'm ready or not. So for him to say that, I saw that on, I think it was Twitter, and I thought it was pretty cool. It just shows that he believes in me and he believes in my talent and, doesn't think I'm too far off. So it's really cool to see, but I try not to look into it too much. I can't look too forward and just kind of take it one day at a time and see where my feet are at right now. But it's hard not to get excited when Dave says something like that about me, and it meant a lot.
On the flip side of that, I wonder, right, like top prospects, their names get mentioned in trade rumors all the time. I wonder how closely you followed along, let's say in the offseason. At one point, the Phillies were thinking about maybe trying to trade for Garrett Crochet. And, that would have been a prospect trade. I don't know that you were per se involved in that, but like, are you the kind of person, kind of guy who keeps tabs on that stuff? Are you, scrolling through Twitter to see what's going on or do you try to insulate yourself from a lot of that chatter?
No, I try and stay away from it. At the end of the day, it's a business, and whatever happens, happens. But I think during the trade deadline last year, I had my roommate, one of my close friends, George Klassen, traded. So that was like my first real taste of like, man, this is a business, and nothing's really guaranteed. So, going through my first trade deadline, obviously I was, I had some questions about if I'd still be here or not, and just it being my first time, I was a little curious. But, now I look at it like, whatever happens, happens. Ultimately, whatever happens is going to be the right thing.
Okay, I'll get you out of here on this. Last year, I covered the Spring Breakout over in Lakeland. You were there. You had a lot of friends and family there, I think. And I was struck by, like what a good time it seemed like you had, like how into it a lot of the guys were, including yourself. The opportunity to maybe play with guys who, are not necessarily at your level, but are in the organization, whether it was Mick Abel, who started that game, or like, someone who's younger than you, like Tait, who played, I think, in that game. And, I remember the first inning, you driving Justin Crawford, and you guys have gotten to be pretty close. And I remember you saying, like, you came back to the dugout and he's like, yeah, I could get used to this. What was that experience like? I think it's one of the cooler events in spring training, and how much are you looking forward to doing it again?
Yeah, the spring breakout's awesome. Especially for us. I think we have a really underrated farm system. We have a ton of studs throughout the whole system, especially younger guys and even the older guys as well. I think it's a real good time to showcase our talent and ultimately get to play with each other as a team. We play a lot of inter squads in spring training and do live BPs, but it doesn't have the same real feel of a real game. And getting to face a new opponent, a real opponent, just makes it even better. So. All of our goals tomorrow is to go out there and win. Since we lost last year against the Tigers, so our goal is to go out there and win, play together, and have some fun, showcase what we got, and see what we can do.
Aiden, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to join us here after a long day in camp. I don't know if people know you guys get here super early in the morning. You had a game today, and so I really appreciate you taking some time to join us on Phillies Extra from the Philadelphia Inquirer. Hope you have a great start to the season. And I am sure that I'll catch up with you in Reading and Lehigh and hopefully in Philly before the season's over.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks again to Aiden Miller for being with us. For our Reporter's Notebook segment, I'm solo this week, and with less than 2 weeks before the Phillies break camp, can you believe that? I thought I'd run down the 3 biggest remaining storylines before the Phillies head north. First, as always, is health. So on the other side of the bay in Tampa, the Yankees are just having a disastrous spring, with Garrett Cole lost for the season to Tommy John surgery, and Luis Gil going down with a strained lat muscle, and the Giancarlo Stanton injury saga. Over across the state in Port St. Lucie, the Mets have lost 2 of their starting pitchers, Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, and catcher Francisco Alvarez, all to injuries. By comparison, the Phillies are in good shape. The only real hiccup so far is Matt Strahm, who was shut down from throwing with some inflammation in his shoulder, but could be throwing by the weekend, depending on how his shoulder checks out on Saturday. Yohan Rojas hasn't played center field yet because of a sore shoulder, but he's shagging fly balls, DHing to get his at-bats, and he's probably going to be ready for the season unless there's a setback in his throwing program. But you can understand why the Phillies would just as soon put everyone in bubble wrap, especially their pitchers, and send them north to Washington for opening day. Second, with all the pitching injuries around the majors, a lot of eyes will be on Taijuan Walker's next few starts. If he continues to pitch well with better velocity on his fastball and a more effective splitter, I'll bet the Phillies start to get a few nibbles from some pitching-needy teams about his availability in a potential trade. But the thing is, Walker's owed $36 million over the next 2 years, and it would take kind of desperation that you almost never see in the middle of March for a team to not only trade for Walker, but also be willing to take on most of that money. Walker isn't really a fit in the bullpen. He's been a starter for his whole career. But if the Phillies would have to pay down a large portion of the contract to trade him, they'll have to ask themselves if there's more value in just stashing him in the bullpen as a long reliever and an insurance policy against an injury to one of their starters. Finally, I watched Cody Clemens get a couple of hits Monday against the Twins and Buddy Kennedy homer Tuesday against the Red Sox, and I started thinking more about the final bench spot. If only Clemens batted right-handed, he'd be a lock because he's out of minor league options. But he's a left-handed hitter, and you have to wonder how many opportunities he's going to get off the bench when the 2 likeliest regulars to be pinch hit for are both left-handed hitters, Brandon Marsh and Max Kepler. Kennedy's also out of options, and he's trying to make himself more versatile by playing some outfield. He had kind of an adventurous day the other day in front of the replica Green Monster at the Red Sox spring training park. But, if he can do that, if he can play a little bit of outfield and he bats from the right side, he's got a place maybe on the end of the Phillies bench. Here's a name to watch, Christian Arroyo. He has big league experience, most notably with the Red Sox, and is an interesting right-handed bat, but he isn't on the 40-man roster, which puts him in a little bit of a disadvantage. There's also the Garrett Stubbs, Rafael Marchand competition for backup catcher. I expect that'll go right down to the wire. Stubbs is having a really nice spring, but I think it's still too close to call, and the circumstances still favor Marchand. He doesn't have options, can't go down to the minors without going on waivers. Stubbs can. That puts him in a little bit of a disadvantage. All right, let's move on to our last segment. We call this Hit and Run. I usually take a question from a reader or a listener, and if you have a Phillies question, you can ask me by email at slauber@inquirer.com or on any of my social media accounts, which you see listed here. But I'm going to end today with a congratulations to Phillies third base coach Dusty Wathan, who found out this week that he'll be inducted into the Reading Baseball Hall of Fame on June 12th. Dusty managed Double-A Reading for 5 years and is the winningest manager in that team's history. He'll be inducted with former Phillies outfielder Darren Ruff and pitching prospect Trevor May, who went on to have a major league career with the Twins, A's, and Mets. Not sure if I'm leaving any teams out there, but I know he was at least with those three. So congratulations to them. It should be a great night up in Reading at the beginning of the summer. Finally, a programming note. If you've missed any previous episodes, including my interviews with Cole Hamels, JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Larry Boa, Caleb Cotham, and now Aiden Miller, you can check them out by clicking the Phillies tab on Inquirer.com or going to the Inquirer's YouTube channel. That'll do it for this week. Thanks again to Aiden Miller for spending some time with us. And as always, to our producer, Angelica Irizarry, for her patience in putting up with me crisscrossing the state of Florida and helping us put this all together. Until next week, I'm Scott Lauber. Thanks to everyone for listening, watching, and of course, for reading the Philadelphia Inquirer.